at her side in good times and bad.
He has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years. And I and his whole family, and this and many other countries, owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim, or we shall ever know.
In this extended programme, we'll be looking at the Duke's remarkable life and reporting on the many tributes from around the world. We'll take a look at the Duke's influence as a father and grandfather and great-grandfather over several decades. And we'll mark the great success of the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme for young people, just one of the achievements being praised by political leaders today.
Like the expert carriage driver that he was, he helped to steer the royal family and the monarchy so that it remained vital to the balance and happiness of our national life.
In recent years, Philip was rarely seen in public. He'd retired from public duties in 2017 after 70 years of service. He was last seen as he returned home to Windsor on the 16th of March after a month-long stay in hospital. And the loss will be felt most keenly today by his widow, the Queen, whose reign has been sustained by his advice and constant presence. Good evening. It was at midday that Buckingham Palace announced the news that Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, had died at the age of 99. The longest-serving royal consort in British history, a man of strong views and a strong sense of duty, was within weeks of celebrating his 100th birthday. In a statement, Buckingham Palace said this: "It is with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen announces the death of her beloved husband, His Royal Highness, the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. His Royal Highness passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle. Further announcements will be made in due course." The royal family join with people around the world in mourning his loss. Prince Philip, at the Queen's side for over 70 years, was one of the most prominent figures in public life, and tributes to the Duke have come from around the world, led here in the United Kingdom by the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. We'll have the story of the Duke's life and the causes that he backed. Before that, let's have a word with our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witcham.
A very sad thing, and of course it is Her Majesty that our thoughts and our prayers go to. They were such a very close and united couple.
And Peaches, what are your memories of Prince Philip?
I can remember about 4 visits that he made to the city here, and then other times when I was fortunate enough to meet him in other locations. And he, being very well read, always knew what to say. He could...
You gouged Homer Simpson for the last time!
We will cancel your account, sir.
The Simpsons are off the grid, and so far it's going great! Yay! Gentlemen, tonight's game is brought to us by something special. A kite's best friend, the flag's partner in patriotism. You've seen cherubs blow it from map corners. The wind!
Yeah, throw me some spots.
Fight for the ramparts we...
For the ramparts we what?
Don't worry, I'll go see what's wrong. What the? Who turned off the wind?
Dad, if we're really off the grid, then we won't get power when the air is still.
Oh. Well, I'm not crawling back to big electricity. From now on, the Simpsons are living intermittently. The wind may have stopped working, but my brain never does. Check it out, gang.
But Dad, it defeats the purpose if you're powering our windmill with electricity from Flanders.
Homer, this meeting of your fan club is adjourned.
Oh, we haven't read the minutes of last week's meeting. You used to be nicer.
When is my turn over? Ugh, bye, please. I'm trying to hear Dr. House's third incorrect diagnosis before his final correct diagnosis. Oh, dear Lord, you've got the wind I need. I've got the prayers you crave. Let's make a deal.
Tense weather warriors are reporting gusts up to 70 knots.
Now we're cooking with wind.
Maybe this is too much electricity.
Nothing is ever right for you.
Oh, why can't our house ever be that bright?
Nothing is ever right for you.
Finally! Oh, well, the lesson here is...
We're gonna go check out the wind damage.
Be careful. If you see a down power line, do whatever it is people are supposed to do in that situation.
Their respects, so too did the leaders of the UK nations.
First and foremost, he was a husband, a father, a grandfather, a great-grandfather, and my thoughts are with all of those today who will be feeling a profound sense of loss and grief. In particular, the Queen. He was her husband of 74 years, and I think we can all imagine just how devastated she will be at his loss.
Throughout his long life, Prince Philip served with selfless devotion and a remarkable generosity of spirit. On behalf of the Welsh Government and people in all parts of Wales, I offer our deepest condolences.
He had a profound and positive impact on thousands of our young people who found their purpose, passion and place in the world through participation in the Duke of Edinburgh Awards.
It was just last month when the Duke left King Edward VII's hospital in central London after a month-long stay, just days after undergoing a procedure for a pre-existing heart condition. The strain was all too clear to see. The Duke's last official engagement before retirement was in the summer of 2017 in the pouring rain as Captain General of the Royal Marines. Later that year at the cenotaph, he and the Queen handed over wreath-laying duties to the younger generations. They watched from a balcony, and suddenly it seemed as if all the years of duty had caught up with him.
What a remarkable life. What a...
Brothers and sisters now, and it's Junior Top Gear. There's Hammond's daughter, and there's Clarkson's son. I do this with my wife most nights. She insists we sleep in separate cots. Keeps the marriage fresh, know what I mean? If you're watching, darling.
Forever cast onto the scrap heap of...
Now Gary's feeling pretty confident. Confident enough to pick a fight with gravity. Visa's zero liability helps protect...
Was in the final stages of lung cancer.
It was a farewell. It was also, as events turned out, goodbye.
It was at a hunting lodge in Kenya that Philip told his wife of her father's death. Someone who was there said Philip looked as though half the world had dropped on him. They returned to London to lead the national mourning.
And now here is the Queen.
His wife was now Queen. Philip was there in support, but he was never given the title Prince Consort, and his role was undefined. He channeled some of his restless energy into a boisterous social life. He and a group of male friends met every week in rooms above a restaurant in London's Soho. There were long, convivial lunches, visits to nightclubs and glamorous companions. By the 1960s, Philip's life was more settled. He and the Queen had completed their family with 2 more children, Andrew and Edward, who joined Charles and Anne, and he had found a new role for himself.
Is it the 18th we're due back now? 18th.
From his office in the palace, he promoted issues in which he had a personal interest.
40 minutes to get round the world. Well, it's going to be a bit of a rush. It may leave you a little bit muddled.
Yet diplomacy seemed alien to him. He urged British industry to pull its finger out and complained on American television that the royal family didn't have enough money.
Inevitably, if nothing happens, we shall either have to, we may have to move into smaller premises, you know.
He blundered on a state visit to China with the Queen. He made what he thought was a private remark about slitty eyes. It was a diplomatic gaffe which dominated the headlines and added to his reputation for making misjudged remarks.
It's all right, Snip.
Yet Philip had a sharp, inquiring mind and was determined to make a contribution of his own. The groundbreaking 60s film Royal Family was made largely at his instigation because he felt it was time for the family to show a more human face to the world.
The salad is ready.
Good.
And for many years he toured the globe as president of the then World Wildlife Fund, speaking out about the need to conserve nature.
We depend on being part of the web of life. We depend on every other living thing on this planet, just as much as they depend on us.
He promoted technology, helped underprivileged children, and had a lifelong interest in spiritual issues. But his most lasting creation was the scheme named after him, the Duke of Edinburgh's Award, which encouraged young people to realise their potential.
To give young people a chance to discover their own abilities for themselves as an introduction to the responsibilities and interests of the grown-up world, and incidentally, to make new friends and have a great deal of fun and satisfaction in the process.
No decade was more difficult for the royal family than the 1990s. The death of Diana, Princess of Wales, was both a family tragedy and a moment of tension for the monarchy. It was the Queen to whom the country looked for public comfort. It was Philip to whom the Queen turned for private support.
And still Prince William, with his head hung, walking next to his grandfather.
It was Philip whose gentle encouragement had persuaded William and Harry to walk behind their mother's coffin to her funeral. And, contrary to his sometimes insensitive image, it had been Philip who had taken the lead in trying to understand the domestic problems of his children, prompted perhaps by his own memories of what it's like to marry into the royal family. Philip remained physically active at an age when most men would have relished retirement. He went carriage driving, and he was still carrying out more engagements than many younger members of the family. Some he did alone, such as this visit to British troops in Iraq.
How did you get into this?
But most he did with his wife. He was the figure a few paces behind the Queen, always looking out for her, and often guiding children through the barriers to present their flowers to her. By the time of his 90th birthday in June 2011, celebrated at his insistence with little fanfare, he'd accepted that it was time to slow down a little.
I reckon I've done my bit. I want to enjoy myself a bit now. With less responsibility, less frantic rushing about, less preparation, less trying to think of something to say. On top of that, memories going, I can't remember names and things. Yes, I'm just sort of winding down.
There was little immediate evidence, though, of any winding down. Despite a serious health scare at Christmas 2011, when he had to be taken to hospital with a blocked coronary artery, he remained at the Queen's side for most of her Diamond Jubilee programme, which took them the length and breadth of the country. It wasn't until 2017 that the Duke, then aged 96, carried out his final solo engagement. It was a parade for the Royal Marines on the forecourt of Buckingham Palace. It was pouring with rain, but, as ever, duty took priority. He took his time meeting those on parade and taking the salute as the Marines marched past to bid him farewell. His life after that was much quieter, spent mostly at the Queen's estate at Sandringham. It was there in January 2019, while he was driving himself from the estate, that he survived a serious road accident. His vehicle overturned, he was badly shaken, and he surrendered his driving licence shortly afterwards. By now he was rarely seen in public. There were occasional appearances at family occasions such as weddings, yet he remained a supportive figure to the Queen and his family. The last sight of him was last month, leaving hospital in London after a month-long stay. He'd undergone treatment for an unspecified heart condition, and he looked frail. While he'd been in hospital, the Queen had had to deal with the aftermath of the Sussexes' US television interview without her husband at her side. Throughout his adult life, despite the formality of his position, Philip retained his own style of doing things. He made his own uncompromising mark on national life. He once summed up his approach in characteristically forthright fashion.
I've just done what I think is my best. I can't suddenly change my whole way of doing things. I can't change my interests. I can't change my way in which I react to things. It's part of somebody's style, and it's too bad.
Throughout all the monarchy's many ups and downs since the Second World War, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, the longest-serving consort in British history, was the restless outsider who put his wife and duty first. In doing so, he fulfilled his coronation oath of allegiance to Elizabeth, his queen. Their marriage and his support were the essential foundations which underpinned the success of her reign. In a speech to celebrate their golden wedding anniversary, the Queen spoke of the debt that she and the country owed him.
He is someone who doesn't take easily to compliments, but he has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years. And I and his whole family, and this and many other countries, owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim, or we shall ever know.
Words of Her Majesty the Queen, ending that report by our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell, recounting the story of the Duke's eventful and remarkable life. Just after midday today, the flags were lowered at Buckingham Palace, so we'll be talking to our correspondent Sarah Campbell in just a moment. First, we'll go to Windsor, where the Duke passed away this morning. Our correspondent Helena Wilkinson is there. So many memories in Windsor.
Region where his military life began. From troop inspections in Devonport in the 1950s, right up until 2016, when he opened a barracks in his name at MOD Lynham in Wiltshire.
Duke of Edinburgh was a naval officer through and through. He enjoyed being with us, he enjoyed teasing us a bit. He was a stickler for what was right or wrong, drill, flags, and enjoyed finding things that he could correct you on, but always done in a nice touch.
This unconventional approach and the Duke's no-nonsense manner endeared him to generations of military personnel and the public alike. But above all, he will be remembered for his innate sense of duty. Ellie Louise Ringe, ITV News.
Well, we can go live now to Norton Manor Camp near Taunton, the home of 40 Commando who were part of the Guard of Honour at Buckingham Palace for Prince Philip's official retirement.
And Ben McGrail is there for us this evening. Ben, the Duke made many visits there in his role as Captain General.
He did, and I think we saw in Ellie's piece just how much the Royal Marines meant to the Duke of Edinburgh, and important to reiterate just how long he spent as the ceremonial head of the corps, 64 and a half years, from 1952 all the way up to when he handed the role on to the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, in 2017. And it was in that year that he did get accompanied by the commandos here at the last public engagement that he took on at Buckingham Palace. He was a very popular visitor here to Norton Manor Camp. I think most notably in 2013 when he handed out service medals to the commandos who'd served some really traumatic tours in Afghanistan in the preceding years. Well, the flags fly at half-mast here at Norton Manor Camp tonight for a man, out of respect of a man who was not only the consort of the monarch but was also the top man of the Royal Marines for 7 decades.
Ben McGrail, thank you very much.
The Duke of Edinburgh is being mourned up the world tonight, but a family is also grieving for the loss of a great-grandfather, a grandfather, father and a husband of more than 7 decades.
Together, the Queen and Prince Philip had the longest marriage of any British sovereign. He was her consort, always by her side. She described him as her strength and stay.
As we've just heard, they first met here in the West Country at Dartmouth. Bob Cruz is live at the Naval College for us this evening. Bob.
The Britannia Royal Naval College in Dartmouth, across the River Dart behind me, held a very special place in the Duke of Edinburgh's heart, because this is where two of the most important things in his life began. This is where he met his future wife, but it's also where he began his career in the Royal Navy. He excelled as a cadet here. He was given the award as the most outstanding cadet in his class, and when he graduated from here, he went straight into active service in the Royal Navy during World War II. But it was in 1939 that he first met the young Princess Elizabeth. She was here in Dartmouth on an official visit with her parents, the King and Queen, and Philip was given the job of looking after the young princess. When she became Queen in 1952 and he became full-time consort, he had to give up his career in the Royal Navy, something he later admitted was rather disappointing. But Her Majesty the Queen recognised the sacrifice that he'd made. On his 90th birthday, she made him Lord High Admiral of the Royal Navy as a mark of her gratitude for his sacrifice and his unstinting support during their long life together, which began here by the River Dart in Devon. Claire Manning reports.
As the Royal Yacht Victoria and Albert glides into the mouth of the River Dart, memories must be revived for His Majesty.
The year is 1939, and as the young Princess Elizabeth steps ashore at Dartmouth, no one could know that over the next few days, the then 13-year-old princess would spend time with the man who would one day become her prince. The once Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark, now a young naval cadet, was assigned the duty of entertaining the young princesses. Photos of that time are held at Britannia Royal Naval College.
We've got this beautiful photo album in front of us. It feels a bit of a privilege, actually, to be looking at it. Tell me more about it.
Well, this is the family album belonging to Captain Dalrymple Hamilton, who was captain of the college here at Dartmouth when the royal visit took place.
Among the snapshots is this one of Princess Elizabeth and Philip playing croquet. At the time, this shot would have seemed insignificant, but it shows, here in Devon, the very beginning of their relationship.
It can be seen as quite a sweet photograph, actually, of the two of them meeting, getting to know each other properly, really, for the first time.
It was just coincidence that Philip was even at the college in 1939. He should have been at sea, but with war approaching, his class just happened to be in Dartmouth.
Even though we have regular royal visits at the college, it's extremely unusual to have the whole royal family there at once, King, Queen, 2 princesses. So it's almost as if maybe fate had a slight hand in it.
Philip was then, though, 18. The 5-year age gap between him and the younger princess, at that time too great. It was a few years later the couple grew closer. At her Devon home, I met with the royal commentator Jenny Bond. I asked her how that young royal romance developed into one of the most solid of lifelong partnerships.
I think the young Philip was sought after by many young ladies, and the Queen, I mean, she thought he was drop-dead gorgeous, quite frankly. He was tall, he was athletic, he was blonde. It was a relationship based absolutely on love. The Duke himself said that it had been a partnership.
It is with the greatest pleasure that the King and Queen announced the betrothal of their dearly beloved daughter, the Princess Elizabeth, to Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten.
Wedded in 1947, marriage for the Queen's young husband came with quite a caveat. Said to become the Queen's consort, Philip was forced to give up his promising naval career, destined now for a life where on public duty he was expected to walk several paces behind his wife. But privately, the Queen ensured they were equals.
The Queen was incredibly wise, actually, as a woman, that she allowed Prince Philip to wear the trousers at home. He could run the estates. To allow him to be proud and to be the man of the household, and I think that was terribly clever of her.
And the Duke was by his wife's side for decades to come. Despite us witnessing few openly affectionate moments between them, there was this touching moment in Taunton in 1987, the Duke encouraging a young boy to give flowers to his wife. Just listen to the cameramen, touched by this gesture, caught on their own microphones while filming.
Oh, look. Good lad. What up, Phil?
Traditionally, royal marriages were for strategic reasons, used to build alliances between countries. But theirs was a love story. To us, he was Prince Philip, Prince Consort, the Duke of Edinburgh, but to the Queen, he was a much adored husband.
I can only imagine that the Queen is bereft. She said he was and always had been her strength and stay, and now at her very advanced age to manage without him, it's going to be extremely tough for her.
The royal commentator Jenny Bond ending that report. Today our region came together in mourning to remember the life of Prince Philip, who has died at the age of 99.
Well, coverage continues on the national news now and across the weekend here on ITV. But from the team here in the West Country, good evening and thank you very much for watching.
Hello.
You're muted.
It's just going to be a little bit colder than it has been over the last couple of days. Now this cold front here, although quite fragmented, has been working its way through slowly today, hence those outbreaks of rain earlier on. Behind that, some colder air and some high pressure, but until that arrives early next week, there are a few showers thrown into the mix. And we've still got a few showers to get rid of through the course of this evening. What's left of that cold front gradually working its way through. There could be some heavy bursts of rain for a time, but it's mostly out of the way by the time we get through to tomorrow morning, leaving us with some pretty clear skies and some low temperatures, certainly along the north coast of Devon and into parts of Somerset. Just that bit milder until that rain finally clears along the south coast, but it will do pretty quickly on Saturday morning, and then it's a pretty promising start. A cold start for some, but a good deal of sunshine around, and only really parts of Dorset and Somerset will hold onto a bit more cloud. Could see a few showers start to work their way in later in the day. It's just going to be a bit colder, highs of 9 or 10 Celsius, but despite all that sunshine, that breeze is going to feel a little bit fresher than the last couple of days. High tide as we head through tomorrow, Falmouth there, 5:25 in the morning and around 10 to 6 in the evening. Similar sort of day on Sunday in terms of temperatures, a few showers around still as well. But into next week, as that high pressure starts to work its way through, we'll see the weather becoming a bit quieter, a bit more settled, hopefully a bit brighter, and we'll also see those temperatures picking up a little bit too.
The nation mourns His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, who has died at the age of 99. Buckingham Palace made the announcement just after midday today, saying the Duke passed away peacefully at Windsor Castle. He was by the Queen's side during 73 years of marriage. Today, she expressed her deep sorrow at the loss of her beloved husband, while the Prime Minister led the nation's tributes.
He helped to steer the royal family and the monarchy so that it remains an institution indisputably vital to the balance and happiness of our national life.
He was like a grandfather to the nation, wasn't he? Lovable, full of duty, but a man, and one that had compassion.
Prince Philip was the longest-serving royal consort in British history. He will be remembered for his unwavering support for the woman he loved and served.
He has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years.
Well, tonight we will look back at their life together and what it meant for the royal family and the country. Plus, his great passion for his pastimes and the legacy his charity work will leave behind.
I owe a lot to the Duke of Edinburgh, and I just want to say thank you for changing my life pretty much.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale from Buckingham Palace.
And good evening from Buckingham Palace, where the flags are at half-mast tonight in memory of the Duke of Edinburgh. The Queen, who's long called him her strength and stay, described her deep sorrow at his death. The couple had been married for 73 years, and the Duke was Britain's longest-serving royal consort. He passed away peacefully at Windsor Castle this morning, where he had only recently returned after a month-long stay in hospital. The Duke was just a few months shy of his 100th birthday. Tributes have been flooding in from around the world today, reflecting the Duke's huge influence and legacy. Here, the Prime Minister said Prince Philip had earned the affection of generations. The Archbishop of Canterbury said he'd always put the interests of others first. And in the first of our special reports this evening, here's our royal editor, Chris Shipp, on the warm tributes tonight to the Duke.
Moments after the official announcement, two courtiers walked across the forecourt of Buckingham Palace, and, as has been the custom for so many years, they posted a notice on the railings. A notice which announced the end of an era, the passing of this country's longest ever consort. The Union flag above the palace had already been lowered to half-mast. The announcement was a personal one on behalf of the Queen. It read, "It is with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen announces the death of her beloved husband, His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. His Royal Highness passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle. Further announcements will be made in due course. The royal family join with people around the world in mourning his loss." At age 99, the Duke of Edinburgh had led a very long and very fulfilling life. He had only officially retired in 2017, when at this ceremony he bowed out of public duties for good. Prince Philip had just spent a long spell in hospital. When he was discharged last month after 4 weeks of treatment for his heart and an infection, it was the longest period he'd spent in hospital. But he was able to spend his final days with the Queen at Windsor Castle, the place where his own mother had been born in 1885.
Prince Philip earned the affection of generations here in the United Kingdom, across the Commonwealth, and around the world. He was the longest serving consort in history, one of the last surviving people in this country to have served in the Second World War. We remember the Duke for all of this, and above all, for his steadfast support for Her Majesty the Queen. Not just as her consort, by her side every day of her reign, but as her husband, her strength and stay of more than 70 years. And it is to Her Majesty and her family that our nation's thoughts must turn today.
At Downing Street, as elsewhere in the country, official flags will now fly at half-mast until the morning after Prince Philip's funeral, the arrangements for which have been significantly revised because of the pandemic. And so too has the advice to the public. Many people had instinctively been moved to lay flowers, but in line with COVID restrictions, they've been urged not to, and also not to congregate at any of the royal residences.
Remembering what he's given to the country, to the world. It's wonderful.
It's a person that's been around for all of my life, and I'm really sad.
And because he has been part of national life for so long, for more than 7 decades, the flowers did keep coming, despite the official advice. This was Windsor Castle this afternoon.
My heart just breaks for the Queen and the family, because she lost her husband, and such a stability in the country, I think, the royal family. So, yeah, just deeply sad.
And in the capitals of the United Kingdom, the moment was being marked. At Piccadilly Circus in central London, and in Edinburgh at the Palace of Holyrood House, the same announcement was posted outside.
He lived a life of public service and deep devotion to the Queen. He had a close association, of course, with Scotland. He went to school in Scotland. I know that he enjoyed all of the time he spent at Balmoral.
The Duke of Edinburgh will be sorely missed by the many Welsh organisations that he supported as patron or president over so many decades of service.
It is with deep sadness that I've learned of the death of His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh. It is a sadness that I know will be shared by countless others in Northern Ireland and right across the world.
From now until the day of the funeral, the Duke of Edinburgh's body will lie in rest at Windsor Castle. He never wanted a state funeral, despite the duty he'd given to his country and to the Queen. She now has the difficult task of signing off the amended funeral plans, which will have to take place behind the castle walls without the public in attendance. Windsor was where the couple spent their 73rd and final wedding anniversary last year. From their marriage at Westminster Abbey through the many years of her reign, the Duke of Edinburgh has been at the Queen's side through the happy times and the challenging ones. He's been her advisor, her confidant, her debater, her rock, her husband. She will now be a widowed monarch. She will do the job alone. At the place where they were married, Westminster Abbey, the tenor bell started to toll at 6 o'clock this evening. It will toll every minute for 99 minutes, one for every year of the Duke of Edinburgh's life.
Flowers have been left outside Windsor Castle, where the Duke passed away this morning. And our correspondent Dan Rivers is there. Dan, the Queen and other senior members of the royal family are in mourning there tonight.
That's right, and the flowers continue to arrive this evening, both at the Henry VIII gate behind me and on the other side of the castle at the Cambridge gate at the end of the long walk, laid by people of many different ages, of different backgrounds, nationalities and faiths, all wanting to come and mark this day and mark their thoughts for the Queen and for the Duke. This afternoon the palace did put out an advisory asking people not to bring flowers, asking instead that perhaps people would consider making a donation to charity and reminding people that there is an online book of condolence. But a lot of the people we spoke to felt conflicted. They knew that today was difficult, that there was a balancing act between being socially distanced and wanting to mark the day, but many felt strongly that they did need to come here and pay their respects. And many of those people were from Windsor itself, a town, of course, closely associated with the Duke playing such a role in the restoration of the castle after the devastating fire in 1992. He was appointed chairman of the Restoration Committee. It was in that castle that he passed away, and it is fitting perhaps that he will be laid to rest inside that castle.
Dan Rivers outside Windsor Castle, thank you. Prince Philip's life was long, eventful and hugely influential. He had a glittering naval career and saw active service during the Second World War. But he had to give that up in 1952 when his wife, then Princess Elizabeth, became Queen. He remained loyally at her side to the very end. Our correspondent John Ray looks back at a remarkable life.
He was born Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark on the island of Corfu. His mother was Princess Alice of Battenberg, which made Philip a great-great-grandchild of Queen Victoria, just like his future wife. But when he was just 18 months old, Philip and his family fled Greece after a coup. He was to find a new home and a future through the Royal Navy.
His Majesty walking down the ranks of the cadets.
At the Naval College in Dartmouth, an encounter that changed his life. At the back here, in the centre of the screen, is 18-year-old Prince Philip. He'd been asked to entertain the King's daughters during a royal visit. Elizabeth, at the time, was just 13. Afterwards, they played croquet. It was clear she had taken a shine to the tall and handsome cadet. War would interrupt any romance that followed. He was mentioned in dispatches. They exchanged letters.
It's easy to see the radiant happiness of the princess
and the coming of peace brought the rekindling of love. King George granted permission for the couple to marry. He renounced his Greek titles and was made Duke of Edinburgh.
Now the Duke of Edinburgh takes a fatherly hand, his technique being no better and no worse than most fathers.
But life was to change again. His naval career abandoned on the death of his father-in-law and the accession to the throne of his wife.
I, Philip, will become your liege man of life and limb, and of earthly worship, and faith and truth I will bear unto you, to live and die, against all manner of folk, so help me God.
Rising, he kisses the Queen's cheek.
As ever with Philip, when duty called, he answered.
The Duke plays it back.
When he wasn't at his wife's side, he channeled his passion for sport into polo. And at the age of 50, turned his attention to carriage driving, for all its challenges and occasional dangers. The Duke took charge of the family side of what even he referred to as the firm. Never more tested than in the collapse of the marriage of his oldest son. The Duke was supportive of Princess Diana. Like her, he was once the royal outsider too. On her death, amid public anguish and anger, he shepherded his grandsons through their immense trauma, and in doing so, helped guide the institution of monarchy past its greatest challenge in modern times. And later that year, when the Queen and Duke celebrated their golden wedding anniversary, she paid him a rare public tribute.
He is someone who doesn't take easily to compliments, but he has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years.
Royal milestones came and went. The Duke was slow to slow down, reluctant to retire, which he eventually did with a characteristic joke.
I'm sorry to hear you standing now.
To the end, this was a partnership. To his wife, to the monarchy, Philip has fulfilled his promise. John Ray, ITV News.
And our royal editor Chris Shipp is here. Chris, very sad pictures looking at them together. The Duke had huge influence, didn't he, in this country, throughout the Commonwealth, but all of this is happening at a very difficult time in time of pandemic.
Yeah, you're right. Let me just take some of those issues. Look, nothing changes constitutionally. The Queen remains the monarch. It's just that she now does so without the consort that's been at her side since 1952. As for his dukedom, the Duke of Edinburgh, that actually officially passes to his eldest son, Prince Charles, but he won't use it. It'll be sort of reassumed and then given out when Prince Charles accedes to the throne. And it is Prince Edward, Prince Philip's youngest son, who will eventually become the new Duke of Edinburgh. But of course, all this is being done at a time when the pandemic has affected every aspect of national life, and so too the funeral plans for the Duke of Edinburgh himself. There were plans that had been in place for a long time that involved, this area where we're standing now, but everything is now going to happen behind the walls of the castle. We understand that he will lie in rest. He doesn't get a state funeral. He will lie in rest until the day of the funeral, but that's the job of the Queen right now. A very difficult job is to sign off on those plans.
All of that is the official side of things, but of course the heart of this is a marriage, a very old lady, now widowed, a very sad day for the family.
Yeah, we've had a sort of hint of that, I think, in recent years, about how she's managed to do her job since his official retirement. But don't forget, behind closed doors, she still had him there. She still had the man that's been by her side all these years. The difference now, of course, for the Queen is that she's going to have to be doing it on her own, and that would be, I think, the most significant change, a personal grief for her. And I think for the nation, a moment to stand back and reflect on a man who's been part of our national life, for 7 decades.
Chris, thank you very much indeed. Well, people right across the UK have been paying their respects to the Duke of Edinburgh today. Bells rang out at cathedrals, and a silent tribute was held at Aintree Racecourse ahead of the Grand National Weekend. And the thoughts of many were with the Queen, as Rachel Younger reports.
His life spanned generations, but it was the youngest who came to Windsor's gates first, one offering a prayer to a prince who has simply always been there.
I think it's almost, you see it coming, but you never really are prepared for it, so you just feel a bit
almost speechless in a way.
At the Minster in York, the bells tolled 99 times, one for each year of the Duke's life. And somehow, despite his age, it still felt too sudden.
It was a shock, because I thought it was really on the mend. Very, very sad. Very, very sad, yes.
As at all the royal residences, at Sandringham, the pandemic meant the public were asked to stay away. But they came regardless. Moments like this reminding us how we measure out our own lives by the royals.
Obviously, when Princess Diana passed away, my mum brought me down there, and I did exactly the same as my daughter's done. So, and I was only about what, 5, 6?
The flags at half-mast in Birmingham, the city's thoughts with those left behind.
I think it's a big shock for the family, but yeah, I just hope they're all okay. All eyes will be on the Queen to see how she's reacting and how her health holds up, because she's also quite odd.
And in Scotland, they mourn not only the Duke, but also the lack of ceremony.
It's so sad, and especially during this pandemic, because the restrictions mean people can't pay their respects properly.
I know he wasn't well, but still a sad day. And, you know, when he was an army man, and he was obviously very active.
I think he was quite a character.
Yeah.
He didn't always say the right things, which people thought, but no, I thought he did well. I thought he was all right.
And that understatement would rather have suited a man they mourned with 2 minutes silence at Aintree. After a year defined by uncertainty, his steadfastness will be even more deeply missed. Rachel Younger, ITV News.
Prince Philip's old school also paid tribute today. Gordonston in Scotland was credited with helping to shape his life. Gave him a love of fitness and the outdoors and his famous steely determination. Our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith is outside the school in Moray. Peter.
It was in September of 1934 that the young Prince Philip arrived